Stop calling Donald Trump a Nazi. He's an American, and that can be bad enough. So for almost a decade now, Trump's opposition has repeatedly compared him and his allies to Nazis. Most recently, these analogies have been extended by labeling the Everglades Detention Center as Alligator Auschwitz instead of Alligator Alcatraz. But my friend and Cherokee academic Rebecca Nagel recently wrote an article arguing that you don't have to reach as far away as Germany's concentration camps to find comparisons for Trump's actions. She says what Trump is doing is not un-American. The worst things he could do are things our government has already done. For example, the Cherokee were forced into concentration camps at gunpoint during the Trail of Tears. So were Navajo and Apache men during the Long Walk. And thousands of members of all these nations died in these camps, which serve as an American precursor to Alligator Alcatraz. And this is before we even get started talking about the horrific conditions of so-called slave jails, which were just concentration camps for kidnapped Africans in America. In fact, many, if not most of the atrocities that we associate with Nazi Germany happened right here in the United States. Maybe not always at the same scale, but definitely in kind. We've had gut-wrenching medical experimentation, eugenics laws and forced sterilizations, lots and lots of ethnic cleansing, all the way up to the big bad and the worst of all human crimes, genocide. In fact, this book, Hitler's American Model, demonstrates how people often get the cause and effect in reverse. It's not Nazi tactics that inspire oppression in the United States, it's the history of racism and genocide in the United States that inspire the tactics of Nazis. In her article, Nagel even points out the absurdity of liberals at No King's Day protests dressing up as historical figures like George Washington to embody the so-called spirit of someone who is against the worst ideals of Donald Trump. Mind you, this is the same George Washington that stole and wore teeth from people that he enslaved. And to bring it full circle, even in the 1930s, Nazis in New York City raised huge portraits of George Washington next to swastikas and called him their hero. Because even they recognize his real legacy of white racial dominance, instead of buying into some idea that he was a paragon of justice and morality. And while I get that comparisons to Nazis can sometimes be rhetorically effective, at some point they've become exhausted, trivializing, and frankly intellectually lazy. Especially when, right here in America, we have over 250 years of people doing things similar to, and in many cases way worse than anything that Trump has yet to carry out. And understanding that all of this has happened before in this very country is the key to understanding why it's being permitted to happen again. And very importantly, what might happen in the future. But let me know what you think in the comments and find the information for Rebecca's Substack in the caption below. And then as always, follow for more.